The empty chair in the third row haunted me more than any ghost ever could. I had saved it for him, placed my mother's purse on the seat to mark it as reserved, checked my phone 17 times in the hour before the ceremony began. But as Principal Rodriguez called my name and I walked across the stage to receive my diploma, that chair remained empty, a void in the shape of everything I had hoped this day would be. Elena Maria Santos, magna cum laude. The applause was warm, genuine, filled with the pride of a community celebrating one of their own. I smiled and shook hands with the principal, accepted my diploma with trembling fingers, and posed for the photographer's flash. But even as I went through the motions of triumph, my eyes kept drifting to that empty seat, to the absence that felt larger than any presence could have been. My mother sat beside the empty chair, her face a careful mask of joy that didn't quite hide the worry lines around her eyes. She clapped enthusiastically, took pictures with her phone, mouthed, "I'm so proud of you," when our eyes met. But I could see the questions there too, the same ones that had been eating at me all morning. Where is he? Why isn't he here? What could be more important than this? My father had never missed anything important in my life. Not my first communion, not my quinceañera, not the school plays where I had 2 lines and forgot one of them. He had been there for every parent-teacher conference, every science fair, every moment that mattered. He was the man who had worked double shifts at the factory to pay for my SAT prep classes, who had stayed up late helping me with college applications, even though he had to be at work at 5 a.m. "Mijo," he would say when I protested that he needed his sleep. "Education is the only inheritance I can give you. Everything else is just things." So where was he now, on the day when that inheritance was finally being claimed? I had called him that morning, my phone pressed to my ear as I sat in my cap and gown, listening to it ring and ring before going to voicemail. "Papa," I had said to the recording, "it's graduation day. I know you're probably just running late, but I wanted to hear your voice. I wanted to tell you that I love you and that none of this would have been possible without you." But the phone had remained silent all day. After the ceremony, as families gathered on the lawn for pictures and celebration, I stood with my mother and tried to pretend that everything was normal. Relatives hugged me and told me how proud they were. Friends took selfies with me. Teachers congratulated me on my acceptance to State University with a full academic scholarship. "Where's your father?" asked my tia Carmen, looking around as if he might materialize from behind a tree. "He had to work," my mother said quickly, the lie sliding off her tongue with practiced ease. "You know how it is." But I could see the confusion in my aunt's eyes. Everyone knew that my father would have moved mountains to be here today. Everyone knew that work had never kept him from my important moments before. As the crowd began to thin and families headed home for their private celebrations, I finally asked the question that had been burning in my chest all day. "Mama," I said quietly, "where is he really?" My mother's careful mask finally cracked, revealing the worry that had been building behind it. "I don't know, me. He left for work this morning like always, but when I called the factory, they said he never showed up." The words hit me like cold water. My father was nothing if not reliable. In 23 years of working at the same factory, he had never missed a day without calling in. He was the man supervisors counted on, the one who stayed late when others left early, the one who had been Employee of the Month so many times they had stopped giving him the award. "Did you try calling him?" Of course I tried calling him. His phone goes straight to voicemail. A chill ran down my spine, despite the warm June afternoon. "Mama, something's wrong." "I know," she whispered, her voice breaking slightly. "I know something's wrong." We drove home in silence. The graduation cap and diploma on the seat between us, feeling suddenly meaningless. The house felt different when we walked in, charged with an anxiety that made the familiar rooms seem foreign and threatening. My mother went immediately to the kitchen to start dinner, a nervous habit that had sustained our family through every crisis. I went to my room and sat on my bed, still wearing my cap and gown, staring at my phone and willing it to ring. At 6 p.m., I called his work again. The supervisor, Mr. Johnson, sounded genuinely concerned. Elena, I've been wondering about your dad all day. It's not like him to just not show up. Is everything okay? We don't know, I admitted. He left for work this morning and we haven't heard from him since. Well, if you hear from him, tell him to give me a call. I'm worried about him too. At 7 p.m., I called the hospitals. No one matching his description had been admitted. No accidents had been reported involving anyone with his name. At 8 p.m., my mother and I sat at the kitchen table, picking at the dinner she had prepared, neither of us really eating. The graduation cake she had ordered weeks ago sat untouched on the counter, its cheerful "Congratulations, Elena" message mocking us with its premature celebration. Maybe he's planning a surprise, my mother said, without conviction. You know how he likes surprises, but we both knew that wasn't it. My father's surprises were small, sweet gestures, flowers picked from the neighbor's garden. My favorite candy bar hidden in my backpack, an extra $20 slipped into my wallet before a date. He wasn't the kind of man who disappeared for an entire day to plan elaborate celebrations. At 9 p.m., just as I was about to call the police, we heard his truck in the driveway. My mother and I rushed to the window, relief flooding through us as we watched him park and slowly get out of the cab. But something was wrong with the way he moved, as if he were carrying an invisible weight that made each step an effort. He came through the front door like a man walking through water, his face gray and drawn, his eyes focused on something we couldn't see. In his hand was a manila envelope, the kind that usually contained important documents or official correspondence. "Papa," I said, still wearing my graduation gown, "where were you? We were so worried." He looked at me as if seeing me for the first time, his eyes taking in the cap and gown, the diploma in my hand, the evidence of the day he had missed. "Mia," he said, his voice rough with emotion, I'm so sorry I missed your graduation." "It's okay," I said quickly, though it wasn't. "You're here now. That's what matters." But he was shaking his head, tears starting to form in his eyes. "No, it's not okay. Nothing about this is okay." He held up the manila envelope, and I could see that his hands were trembling. "This came in the mail yesterday," he said. "I didn't open it until this morning, after I left for work. I had to pull over on the side of the road because I couldn't see to drive." My mother and I exchanged glances. "What is it, Papa?" He looked at me with an expression I had never seen before, mixture of pride and devastation that made my chest tighten with fear. "It's from Immigration Services," he said quietly. "My deportation order came through." The words hung in the air like smoke from a dying fire. I felt the ground shift beneath me, reality rearranging itself around this new, impossible information. "What do you mean, deportation order?" I asked, though part of me already knew. My father sat down heavily in his favorite chair, the envelope still clutched in his hands. "I mean, I have 30 days to leave the country, or they'll come and take me." The room spun around me. This couldn't be happening. Not today. Not ever. "But Papa," I said, my voice sounding strange and distant, "you've been here for 25 years. You have a job, a family. I'm starting college in the fall. I know, Mia. I know there has to be something we can do. A lawyer, an appeal, something." He looked at me with eyes full of love and sorrow. "I've been fighting this for 2 years, Elena, ever since the new policies went into effect. I thought I had more time. I thought maybe, with your graduation, with you going to college, they might make an exception. 2 years," my mother's voice was sharp with shock. "You've been dealing with this for 2 years and you never told us. I didn't want to worry you. I didn't want to ruin Elena's senior year. I thought I could handle it, thought I could find a way to stay." I felt tears starting to fall, hot and angry and full of disbelief. "So you spent the day driving around instead of coming to my graduation?" "I spent the day trying to figure out how to tell you," he said. "How to explain that your father, the man who taught you that hard work and education could overcome anything, is being sent back to a country you've never seen because of paperwork and policies and things that have nothing to do with who we are as people." The graduation gown that had felt so important that morning now felt like a costume, a prop in a play that had suddenly changed genres from celebration to tragedy. 30 days, I repeated, trying to make the words make sense. 30 days, he confirmed. And in that moment, I understood why he hadn't come to my graduation. How could he sit in that auditorium and watch me receive my diploma, knowing that he might not be here to see me use it? How could he celebrate my future when his own had just been torn away? The empty chair finally made sense. It hadn't been empty because he didn't care. It had been empty because he cared too much to pretend that everything was normal when our world was falling apart. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my bed, still wearing my graduation dress, because changing clothes felt like accepting that the day was over, that this new reality was real. Through the thin walls of our house, I could hear my parents talking in low, urgent voices. The kind of conversation that happens when adults are trying to solve problems that have no solutions. Every few minutes, I would pick up my phone and stare at the congratulatory messages that had been pouring in all evening. Friends sending pictures from their graduation parties, relatives expressing pride and excitement about my college plans, teachers wishing me well for the future. Each message felt like it belonged to a different person, someone whose life hadn't been appended by a manila envelope and 30 days' notice. At 3 a.m., I finally got up and walked to the kitchen for a glass of water. My father was sitting at the table, the deportation letter spread out in front of him like a map to nowhere. He had changed out of his work clothes into the pajamas my mother had bought him for Christmas, but he looked like he hadn't even considered sleeping. "Papa," I said softly, not wanting to startle him. He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed and exhausted. "Mia, you should be sleeping. Tomorrow is a new day." I sat down across from him, the same position I had taken for countless homework sessions and heart-to-heart talks over the years. "I can't sleep. How can I sleep when this is happening?" He reached across the table and took my hand, his calloused fingers rough from 23 years of factory work. "You sleep because you have a future to prepare for. You sleep because your life doesn't stop because mine is changing. My life doesn't stop." I pulled my hand away, anger flaring in my chest. "Papa, you're talking about leaving the country. You're talking about leaving me. I'm talking about being forced to leave," he corrected gently. "There's a difference, is there? Because either way, you won't be here when I start college. You won't be here for my graduation from college. You won't be here for my wedding, or when I have children, or for any of the things that matter." The words came out harsher than I intended, but I couldn't stop them. All the fear and confusion and grief I had been holding in since he walked through the door was pouring out like water from a broken dam. "Elena," he said, his voice steady despite the pain in his eyes, "do you think this is what I want? Do you think I would choose to leave you?" "I don't know what to think anymore," I said, tears starting to fall again. "I don't understand how this can be happening. You pay taxes, you work hard, you've never been in trouble with the law. You're a good person. Being a good person doesn't matter to immigration law, Mia. What matters is paperwork, and I don't have the right paperwork. Then we'll get the right paperwork. We'll hire a lawyer, we'll file appeals, we'll do whatever it takes." My father's smile was sad and tired. "We've been trying for 2 years, Elena. I've spent our savings on lawyers and filing fees and applications that go nowhere. The system isn't designed for people like me, people like you. People who came here 25 years ago with nothing but hope and a willingness to work. People who built lives and families and communities, but never had the right documents to make it official." I stared at him. This man who had been the most stable, reliable presence in my life, and tried to reconcile what he was telling me with everything I thought I knew about fairness and justice and the American dream. "So what happens now?" I asked. "Now I have 30 days to get my affairs in order. To make sure you and your mother are taken care of. To figure out how to leave without destroying everything I've built here. And then what? Then I go back to Mexico and try to figure out how to live in a country I left when I was younger than you are now." The kitchen fell silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic on the highway. I looked around at the room where we had shared so many meals, so many conversations, so many ordinary moments that now felt precious beyond measure. "I could come with you," I said suddenly. "No." His response was immediate and firm. "Absolutely not." "Why not?" "I could defer college for a year. Come with you. help you get settled, Elena Maria Santos, he said, using my full name the way he did when he was being serious. You will not sacrifice your future for my mistakes. Your mistakes, Papa. What mistakes? Working hard? Providing for your family? Trying to build a better life? My mistake was not getting the proper documentation when I had the chance. My mistake was thinking that being a good person and a hard worker would be enough. My mistake was not preparing for this possibility. I wanted to argue with him, to tell him that none of this was his fault, that the system was broken and cruel and wrong. But I could see in his eyes that he had already had this argument with himself 1,000 times, and guilt had won. What about Mama? I asked. Your mother is a citizen. She can stay, she can work, she can take care of you, but she loves you. We both love you, and I love you both more than life itself, he said, his voice breaking slightly. Which is why I won't let you throw away your opportunities to follow me into uncertainty. My mother appeared in the doorway, wearing her robe and slippers, her hair mussed from a sleep that had clearly been as elusive as mine. I heard voices, she said, settling into the chair beside my father. Are we having a family meeting at 3 a.m.? We're trying to figure out what comes next, I said. My mother reached for my father's hand, and I watched their fingers intertwine with the practiced ease of 22 years of marriage. What comes next, she said firmly, is that we don't give up. What comes next is that we fight this with everything we have. Maria, my father said gently, we've been fighting for 2 years. Then we fight for 2 more years. We fight for 20 more years if we have to. The deportation order is final. There are no more appeals. Then we find another way, my mother said, her voice rising with determination. We find a congressman, a senator, someone who can help. We get the media involved. We make noise until someone listens. I looked at my parents, at these 2 people who had given me everything they had, who had sacrificed their own dreams to make mine possible, and I felt something shift inside me. The helplessness that had been consuming me since my father walked through the door began to transform into something else. Resolve. Mama's right, I said. We don't give up, we fight. My father looked at us both with an expression that was equal parts love and desperation. Majis, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but you don't understand how the system works. Once they make a decision like this, then we change the system, I interrupted. Or we find a way around it. Or we make so much noise that they have to reconsider. Elena, you're 18 years old. You're about to start college. You can't take on the immigration system. Watch me, I said. And for the first time since he had walked through the door with that envelope, I saw something like hope flicker in his eyes. We sat there in the kitchen until dawn, planning and strategizing, and refusing to accept that 30 days was enough time to say goodbye to a life. By the time the sun came up, we had a list of lawyers to call, politicians to contact, and organizations that might be able to help. It wasn't much, but it was something. It was hope. And sometimes, hope is all you need to keep fighting. As I finally went to my room to try to get a few hours of sleep before beginning what would be the most important fight of our lives, I thought about the empty chair at my graduation. I understood now why my father hadn't been able to sit there, why he couldn't pretend to celebrate when our world was crumbling. But I also knew that the next time I walked across a stage, whether it was at college graduation or law school graduation or whatever came after, that chair wouldn't be empty. I would make sure of it. Because some fights are too important to lose. And some people are too important to let go without a battle. The next morning arrived with the cruel indifference of time that refuses to stop for personal catastrophes. I woke up to the sound of my mother making coffee, the familiar ritual of morning continuing despite the fact that our world had fundamentally changed overnight. I found her in the kitchen, still in her robe, surrounded by papers, and her laptop open to a website about immigration law. She had always been the organized one in our family, the one who kept track of appointments and deadlines and important documents. Now she was applying that same methodical approach to saving her husband from deportation. I've been up since 5, she said without looking up from her screen. I've found 3 immigration lawyers who specialize in deportation cases. to advocacy organizations that might be able to help, and a congressman who has a good record on immigration issues. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat down beside her, marveling at her ability to channel grief into action. What about Papa? He left for work an hour ago, said he needed to think, needed to keep his routine normal while he still could. The idea of my father going to work as if nothing had changed, performing his job while knowing he had 30 days left in the country, broke my heart in a way I hadn't expected. Mama, I said carefully, what if we can't fix this? What if 30 days really is all we have? She finally looked up from her laptop, and I saw that her eyes were red from crying, but her jaw was set with determination. Then we make the most of 30 days. But Elena, I refuse to believe that this is how our story ends. I refuse to believe that a good man who has spent 25 years contributing to this community can be thrown away like garbage because of paperwork. Her phone rang, interrupting our conversation. She glanced at the caller ID, and her face lit up with hope. It's Attorney Martinez, she said, answering quickly. Hello. Yes, this is Maria Santos. Thank you for calling me back so early. I listened to her side of the conversation, trying to read her expressions for clues about what the lawyer was telling her. Hope, disappointment, confusion, and determination flickered across her face in rapid succession. I see, she said finally. And there's really nothing else we can do. No emergency stays, no humanitarian exceptions. A pause. I understand. Thank you for your honesty. She hung up and sat quietly for a moment, staring at her hands. What did he say? I asked, though her expression had already told me most of what I needed to know. He said that deportation orders like your father's are almost impossible to overturn. The best we could hope for would be a voluntary departure, which would allow him to leave on his own terms and potentially apply to return legally in the future. How long would that take? 10 years minimum, maybe longer. 10 years, I would be 28, by the time my father could even apply to come home. I would have finished college, maybe graduate school, maybe be married with children he might never meet. There has to be something else, I said. There has to be another option. My mother pulled up another website on her laptop. There is one possibility. A private bill. What's that? It's when a member of Congress introduces legislation to help a specific person or family. It's rare and it's difficult, but it has been done before. I leaned over to read the screen, scanning articles about families who had been saved from deportation by congressional intervention. The stories were inspiring, but also daunting. Most of them involved years of advocacy, media attention, and political pressure. How do we get a congressman to introduce a private bill for Papa? We tell his story, my mother said simply. We make people understand who he is, what he's contributed, why he deserves to stay. I thought about my father, the man who had never missed a day of work in 23 years. Who had coached Little League Baseball for free every summer, who had volunteered at our church's food bank every Thanksgiving, who had taught me that education was the key to everything. We need to document everything, I said, my mind starting to race with possibilities. His work history, his community involvement, letters from people who know him, and we need media attention, my mother added. We need to make his case public, get people talking about it. I can help with that, I said. I know people at the school newspaper, and I have friends who are good with social media. We can start a campaign. For the first time since my father had walked through the door with that envelope, I felt like we had a plan. It was a long shot, maybe even an impossible shot, but it was something we could do besides sit around and count down the days. There's something else, my mother said, her voice becoming more serious. If we do this, if we make his case public, there will be attention. Some of it might not be friendly. I knew what she meant. Immigration was a contentious issue, and not everyone would be sympathetic to our situation. There would be people who would say, my father deserved to be deported, that he should have done things the right way, that we were asking for special treatment. I don't care, I said. Let them say whatever they want. Papa is worth fighting for. My mother smiled, the first genuine smile I had seen from her since yesterday. Yes, he is. We spent the rest of the morning making phone calls and sending emails. I contacted my high school journalism teacher, who put me in touch with a reporter at the local newspaper. My mother reached out to my father's supervisor, his co-workers, and the pastor at our church, asking them to write letters of support. By noon, we had the beginnings of a campaign. It wasn't much yet, but it was a start. When my father came home for lunch, he found us surrounded by papers and laptops and phones. Our kitchen transformed into a war room. "What's all this?" he asked, though I could see in his eyes that he already knew. "This is us fighting for you," I said. "This is us refusing to give up." He sat down heavily in his chair, looking older than I had ever seen him. "Majas, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I don't want you to get your hopes up. I don't want you to be disappointed when this doesn't work, Papa," I said. Moving to kneel beside his chair, "You taught me that education was the most important thing, that it could open doors and create opportunities. But you know what else you taught me? You taught me that family is worth fighting for. You taught me that good people deserve good things. You taught me that sometimes you have to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard." Tears were forming in his eyes. "Elena, I'm scared. I'm scared that if we fight this and lose, it will be even harder on all of us. And I'm scared that if we don't fight, we'll spend the rest of our lives wondering what might have been," I replied. "Papa, you've spent 25 years building a life here. You've earned the right to stay. Let us help you prove it." He looked around the kitchen at the evidence of our morning's work, at the determination in our faces, and I saw something shift in his expression. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay, we fight." My mother reached across the table and took his hand. "We fight together, and we don't stop fighting until we win," I added. As we sat there in our kitchen, surrounded by the tools of our resistance, I thought about the graduation ceremony I had walked across the stage less than 24 hours ago. I had thought that was the beginning of my adult life, the moment when I would start making my own way in the world. But I realized now that this was the real beginning. This moment, when I chose to fight for my family instead of accepting injustice. This moment, when I decided that some things were more important than my own plans and dreams. The empty chair at my graduation finally made complete sense. My father hadn't been there because he was already fighting a battle I didn't know about. Now it was time for me to join that fight. And I was ready. Within a week, our kitchen table campaign had grown beyond anything I could have imagined. What started as desperate phone calls and hastily written emails had transformed into something that looked almost professional, a real advocacy effort with real momentum. The local newspaper ran a front-page story about my father, titled "The American Dream Deferred. Local factory worker faces deportation after 25 years." The reporter, a woman named Jennifer Walsh, had spent hours interviewing my father, his co-workers, and members of our community. The article painted a picture of a man who embodied everything Americans said they valued: hard work, family devotion, community service. "I've been covering immigration stories for 10 years, Jennifer told me when she called to follow up, and I've rarely seen a case that so clearly illustrates the human cost of our broken system. Your father's story is compelling because it's not political, it's just human." The story was picked up by the regional news stations, and suddenly our phone was ringing constantly. Reporters wanting interviews, advocacy organizations offering help, strangers calling to express support. My mother had to take time off work just to manage the response. But the most surprising call came on a Thursday afternoon, while I was helping my father organize the letters of support that had been pouring in from his co-workers, church members, and neighbors. "Elena," my mother called from the kitchen, "there's someone on the phone who wants to talk to you. She says she's from Congressman Bradley's office." I felt my heart skip a beat. Congressman Bradley represented our district and had a reputation as someone who actually listened to his constituents. We had sent his office a packet of information about my father's case, but I hadn't expected to hear back so quickly. "This is Elena Santos," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Elena, this is Sarah Chen from Congressman Bradley's office. I've been reviewing your father's case. And the congressman would like to meet with your family next week to discuss the possibility of introducing a private bill on his behalf. I had to sit down. After days of feeling like we were shouting into the void, someone with actual power was listening. That's incredible, I managed to say. Yes, we would love to meet with him. I have to be honest with you, Sarah continued. Private bills are extremely difficult to pass. They require bipartisan support and extensive documentation. But your father's case has some compelling elements that make it worth pursuing. After I hung up, I found my parents in the living room, watching the evening news coverage of my father's story. Seeing him on television, talking about his love for America and his fear of being separated from his family, made the whole situation feel surreal. Papa, I said, Congressman Bradley wants to meet with us. He's considering introducing a private bill. My father muted the television and stared at me. Are you serious? I'm serious. We have a meeting next Tuesday. For the first time in weeks, I saw genuine hope in his eyes. Not the desperate hope we had been clinging to, but real, substantive hope based on concrete possibilities. Mia, he said, his voice thick with emotion, I can't believe this is happening. Believe it, Papa. People are listening. People care about what happens to you. The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation for the meeting with Congressman Bradley. We gathered every document we could find: tax returns, employment records, community service certificates, letters from teachers who had taught me over the years. We wanted to present a complete picture of our family's life in America. The meeting was held in the congressman's local office, a modest space that felt more like a community center than a seat of political power. Congressman Bradley was younger than I had expected, with an easy smile and a manner that put us at ease immediately. Mr. Santos, he said, shaking my father's hand, I've read your story, and I want you to know that I'm impressed by what you've built here. 25 years of steady employment, community involvement, raising a daughter who's clearly going places. That's exactly the kind of contribution we should be celebrating, not punishing. My father struggled to find words. Congressman, I just want to stay with my family. I want to see my daughter graduate from college. I want to grow old in the country that gave me everything. I understand, Congressman Bradley said, and I want to help you do that. But I need you to understand what we're up against. Private bills are rare, and they're difficult. We'll need to build a coalition of support, both in Congress and in the community. We'll need to make your case so compelling that even people who generally oppose immigration reform will see why you deserve to stay. What does that look like? I asked. It looks like more media coverage, more community support, more documentation of your father's contributions. It looks like a sustained campaign that could take months or even years. We have 30 days, my mother said quietly. Actually, the congressman said, we might be able to buy you more time. I can request a stay of deportation while we work on the private bill. It's not guaranteed, but it's possible. The relief in the room was palpable. Even the possibility of more time felt like a victory. What do you need from us? I asked. I need you to keep doing what you're doing. Keep telling your story. Keep building support. Keep showing people who your father really is. And I need you to be patient. This process doesn't move quickly. As we left the congressman's office, I felt something I hadn't experienced since this whole ordeal began. Genuine optimism. Not the desperate hope we had been clinging to, but real belief that we might actually win this fight. Elena, my father said as we walked to the car, I need to tell you something. What, Papa? I'm proud of you. Prouder than I was when you graduated, prouder than I'll be when you graduate from college. I'm proud of the woman you've become, the fighter you've shown yourself to be. I learned it from you, I said. You taught me that some things are worth fighting for. No, Mia. You taught me that. You taught me that sometimes the people we love are worth taking risks for, worth making noise for, worth believing in, even when the odds are against us. That night, I sat in my room and looked at my graduation diploma, still in its frame on my desk. The day I had received it felt like a lifetime ago, but I realized now that it had been the beginning of something much more important than my academic career. It had been the beginning of my education in what really mattered. family, justice, the power of ordinary people to create extraordinary change when they refuse to give up. The empty chair at my graduation had led to this moment, to this fight, to this discovery of who I really was when everything I loved was threatened, and I was just getting started. 6 months later, I stood in the gallery of the House of Representatives, watching Congressman Bradley address his colleagues about H.R. 3847, also known as the Santos Family Unity Act. My father sat beside me, wearing the same suit he had worn to my high school graduation. His hands clasped tightly in his lap as he listened to a member of Congress argue for his right to remain in the country he had called home for 25 years. "Mr. Speaker," Congressman Bradley said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber, "this bill is not about immigration policy. It's about recognizing the contributions of a man who embodies the best of American values. Roberto Santos has worked steadily for 23 years, paid his taxes, raised a daughter who graduated valedictorian and is now studying pre-law at State University. He has coached Little League, volunteered at his church, and been a model citizen in every way except for the accident of his documentation status." The months since our first meeting with the congressman had been a marathon of advocacy, media appearances, and community organizing. The stay of deportation had been granted, giving us time to build the case for my father's permanent residency. What had started as a desperate family's last hope had grown into a movement that captured national attention. The story had been covered by major news networks, featured in magazine articles, and shared millions of times on social media. Hashtag #SavRoberto had become a rallying cry for immigration reform advocates. While my father's story had put a human face on the abstract debates about deportation policy, but perhaps the most powerful moment had come 3 months earlier, when my father's co-workers at the factory had organized a rally in his support. More than 500 people had gathered in the town square, holding signs and sharing stories about how my father had touched their lives. His supervisor, Mr. Johnson, had spoken about my father's reliability and work ethic. The pastor from our church had talked about his volunteer work with the food bank. My high school principal had described how my father's dedication to my education had inspired other parents in the community. "This is what America looks like," one speaker had said. "This is what we're fighting for." Now, as I watched the debate unfold on the House floor, I thought about the journey that had brought us to this moment. The empty chair at my graduation had been the beginning of a story. I never could have imagined a story about the power of love to move mountains, about the importance of fighting for what's right even when the odds seem impossible. The Santos family represents the best of what immigration can be. Congressman Bradley continued. They represent people who come here seeking opportunity and give back more than they take. They represent the American dream not as an abstract concept, but as a lived reality. The debate lasted for 2 hours. Representatives from both parties spoke about immigration policy, about the rule of law, about compassion and justice. Some argued that private bills set dangerous precedents, that exceptions couldn't be made for everyone. Others argued that exceptional circumstances required exceptional responses. Through it all, my father sat quietly beside me, occasionally reaching over to squeeze my hand or my mother's. He had become more comfortable with public attention over the months, but I could see that this moment, having his fate debated by the United States Congress, was almost overwhelming. "Whatever happens," he whispered to me during a brief recess, "I want you to know that this has been the proudest time of my life. Not because of the attention, but because of what you and your mother have shown me about the power of love and determination." Papa whispered back, "You taught us how to fight by showing us what was worth fighting for." When the debate concluded and the vote was called, the gallery fell silent. Representatives voted electronically, their choices appearing on a large board at the front of the chamber. I watched the numbers climb, yes votes in green, no votes in red, my heart pounding with each new tally. The final count was closer than we had hoped, but decisive enough to matter. 267 yes, 162 no. The Santos Family Unity Act had passed the House of Representatives. My father buried his face in his hands and wept. My mother wrapped her arms around both of us, tears streaming down her face. Around us in the gallery, supporters who had traveled from our hometown cheered and applauded until the sergeant-at-arms called for order. "It's not over yet," I reminded them, though I was crying too. "It still has to pass the Senate." "It will," my father said with a certainty I hadn't heard in his voice since this whole ordeal began. "It will pass because people understand now. They understand that this isn't about politics, it's about family." The Senate vote came 6 weeks later, and while it was closer than the House vote, it passed by a margin of 8 votes. President Martinez signed the bill into law on a Tuesday afternoon in the Oval Office, with our family present as witnesses. "This is what America is about," the president said as he handed my father the pen he had used to sign the bill. "This is about recognizing that our strength comes from people like you, Roberto, people who work hard, love their families, and contribute to their communities." That evening, we returned home to a celebration that had been organized by our neighbors and friends. The same town square where we had held our rally was now filled with people celebrating not just my father's victory, but what it represented for all of them. As I stood on the makeshift stage, looking out at the crowd of people who had supported us through this journey, I thought about the graduation ceremony that had started it all. The empty chair that had broken my heart had led to this moment, to this community, to this understanding of what really mattered in life. A year ago, I said into the microphone, my father missed my high school graduation because he had received a deportation order. I was devastated. I couldn't understand how the most important day of my life could be overshadowed by something so unfair, so wrong. The crowd was quiet, listening. But I understand now that my real graduation wasn't that day in the auditorium. My real graduation was the moment I decided to fight for my family. My real education wasn't in the classroom, it was in learning that ordinary people can create extraordinary change when they refuse to accept injustice. I looked down at my father, who was standing in the front row with my mother, both of them beaming with pride. "Papa, you taught me that education was the key to everything. But you know what? You were wrong about one thing. Education isn't just about books and grades and diplomas. Education is about learning who you are when everything you love is threatened. Education is about discovering that love is stronger than fear, that hope is more powerful than despair, that families are worth fighting for no matter what the odds." The applause was thunderous, but I barely heard it. All I could see was my father, tears streaming down his face, mouthing the words "I love you" over and over again. Later that night, as the celebration wound down and our family finally had a moment alone, my father pulled out his phone and showed me something that made me laugh and cry at the same time. It was a photo from my high school graduation, the one he had missed. Someone had taken a picture of the empty chair where he should have been sitting, and he had saved it on his phone. "I look at this picture every day," he said. "It reminds me of what we almost lost and what we fought to save." "Papa," I said, "next spring, when I graduate from college, that chair won't be empty." "No, Mia," he replied, pulling me into a hug that felt like coming home. "That chair will never be empty again." As I fell asleep that night in my childhood bedroom, in the house where my family would continue to build our life together, I thought about the letter that had arrived on graduation night. The letter that had changed everything, that had shown us what we were capable of when we refused to give up on each other. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives become the doorways to the best moments. Sometimes the things that break our hearts open them wide enough to hold more love than we ever thought possible. The empty chair had been filled, not just with my father's presence, but with the understanding that family is not just about being together, it's about fighting to stay together, no matter what forces try to pull you apart. And that was a lesson worth more than any diploma I would ever receive. In the end, we learn that love is not just a feeling, it's a choice we make every day to fight for what matters most.